Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. In today's video, I'm going to check out for the first time our brand new Void Battle against a Water Element Chimera. You're going to want to play this Water Element Void Battle this week since doing so will let you craft Water Chimera Tech weapons, and those are prerequisites to Water Agito weapons that will soon be available to us once the Flame Twins Agito comes out. So this is a good time to clear out your Void Endeavors, play through this content. I'm enjoying it casually as I continue to play through the Halloween content, finish up the new story chapter on hard and very hard difficulty. It's kind of a relaxed period. It's sort of a dead week in Dragalia Lost as we ramp up for more and more new content, but obviously we just got the story chapter, we're getting a new Agito trial. So while it's a dead week in the sense that we have Void Endeavors, we don't have an event, there is a lot happening in the game. Having said that, Void Battles themselves are not the most exciting thing. They tend to run very similar to one another, and the Chimeras, in my mind, are basically all identical, they're just of different elements. So instead of commentating on the gameplay that you're seeing per se, my first 5 or so clears of the Water Element Void Chimera, I figured I'd talk about something interesting to me that released over the weekend. This was an article on Bloomberg by Takashi Mochizuki, and the title of the article is Nintendo Chills Mobile Ambitions After Animal Crossing Success. So basically this article made reference to the success that Animal Crossing New Horizons has seen on the Switch, and how profitable and lucrative the Switch has been in the pandemic era or world that we now live in, and explains how Nintendo is focusing its efforts more on its home console or hybrid console rather than on brand new mobile titles. So I thought this would be an interesting topic to discuss. I'm posting a link to the article in the description below. Of course, as a disclaimer, this does not constitute financial advice. I'm not a financial analyst. I'm just a fan of Dragalia Lost, and this is an interesting topic to me. So that is my disclaimer, and be sure to support the author. You can check out their article in the link that I'm posting. But anyway, I wanted to discuss this because you see a lot of pundits on forums, on Discord, or whatever, talking about Dragalia Lost. Is it a dead game? What type of future does it have? Can it be salvaged? Is Cygames going to take it over? Why is it not making money? So this topic comes up again and again, and yet here we are, Dragalia yet lives. Now, I'm not saying it's going to live forever, but we're still here. So I thought this would be a fun thing to discuss and kind of talk about maybe how it could potentially monetize. And this is pure speculation again. I have no idea how this works from a business standpoint, but I thought it would make for an interesting video. So let me begin with a couple quotes from the article that kind of summarize what's included in it, and then we'll quote from it periodically, obviously not everything from it, but periodically to try to add some context and spark some discussion. Let's begin with, Nintendo is retreating from the $77 billion mobile gaming arena after disappointing results deflated once lofty ambitions. Alright, so this pretty much summarizes what I said about them moving or pivoting away from mobile. And then later in the article we get some additional context which says, and I quote, "For the current fiscal year ending in March, Nintendo said it would focus on already released mobile apps and doesn't foresee revenue from that business rising much." Okay, end of quote. And indeed, there's a graphic or a chart in the article that shows year-on-year revenue changes from February to May 31st. And for Dragalia, Super Mario Run, and Fire Emblem Heroes, the year-on-year revenue change is all negative, and the lowest of them is actually Dragalia Lost. So Dragalia, it's known, or it's been known for a while, Dragalia is not the big money maker among Nintendo's mobile titles, which was to say far below Fire Emblem Heroes, which is the most profitable Nintendo mobile game, or at least has the largest revenue. And so really, there's been a lot of skepticism about whether Nintendo can sustain this new IP. Dragalia has been adapting to a lot of the practices that are successful in Cygames' other franchises, like Grand Blue Fantasy. We've seen it really modeling itself after Grand Blue Fantasy, and in terms of the content that's being rolled out for it and so on. The galas, for example, you could say parallel things in Grand Blue Fantasy as well. However, it's not as successful financially. Now that's a much older game, there's heavily enfranchised players, that's a game that's not without its own share of controversy, as people have spent thousands of dollars on that game, as I'm sure they've spent on Dragalia. One of the most frequent refrains I hear from the Dragalia community is, there's not enough things to buy. There's no reason to spend money on this game. It's too generous of a game. And so I thought to add some context to that, I'd add a quote from this article which says, fearing that it would harm the brand equity of its franchises, Nintendo asked its mobile development partners not to force players to spend a lot in games, according to people at those companies, who asked not to be identified as the matter is private. Okay, end of quote. And we know that, we've known that before, we've heard that before, but I thought it would be interesting in this context to say that just because it has come up before. Cyber Agent was lamenting Nintendo not allowing them to make Dragalia's monetization as aggressive as they might have liked, but it's a weird paradox I feel that we're in, where part of why this game is so cherished by the fan base it does have is because it doesn't rely on a lot of the over-the-top or more greedy monetization tactics that gacha games can tend to fall into. So on one hand, I'm sad that we're not able to support the game monetarily. On the other, I'm happy because it's made for such a special game and a special relationship, I feel, between players and the dev team. As much as we may complain about things, I feel like we've never felt necessarily that the dev team is solely doing things for the purpose of being greedy. I know when the dual banners came out, or like the split banners, part 1 and 2, that was obviously like a monetization move. Now we have these platinum showcases where you get random dragons, not necessarily the dragons that are shown. And I almost see more apologists than I see people complaining. I see more people who are like, well, the devs have to make money somehow, the game is too generous, this is a good thing. Then I actually see people who are genuinely upset about that happening. So I really don't know what Dragalia can do while trying to maintain its wholesome brand image and its good brownie points, I guess, with the community, and at the same time trying to make more money. Now, I know a lot of players have suggested that skins could be a thing or like an option, but frankly, if it's weapon skins or like dragon skins or whatever, I really do not care. So I feel like there are probably other players like me who wouldn't spend for skins. If it's adventure skins, then maybe that could be a thing. And obviously the Skillshare system has kind of been implemented in such a way that you could spend money on it, but I feel like not that many players are, except for the fun or cosmetic skills. So it kind of worked out in a weird way where like the main reason people spend or wail on that is for that reason, which maybe is a sign to the Dragalia devs that people do like cosmetics and like funny stuff. There has to be some way to monetize the game in order for it to continue to survive. And there's a lot of pundits who think that the game's decreased production value has something to do with the lack of revenue, and they could be right. It might also be world circumstances. You never know. It could be the change in directors. Maybe there's already a plan to sunset Dragalia Lost. And basically what I want to say is that for me, I've never really cared about how long Dragalia Lost lasts. What I care about is the quality of the game and whether the developers are able to make a decent wage and decent living on the content that they're creating. So from my vantage point, if Dragalia lasts until the end of the year, but it does so in a way that stays true to what it is, that's better than if it lasts 5 more years and we're in a purgatory where we're all wailing and spending ridiculous sums of money to get the latest power creep. So for me, I feel like things are good when they have an end. I would not be unhappy if Dragalia ends next year or the end of this year. For me, that's just like how part of games work. Like a lot of the best games are really short. They don't run for multiple years. I think back to the previous games as services I've played, which are not many, but when I think about playing something like, say, Splatoon, there was an arc to it. There was Splatfest that I played and enjoyed, the final Splatfest, and then that played out in Splatoon 2, got into it, got into the meta as new weapons were released, really had a fun time with it, and eventually it kind of reached a point where I decided, okay, I've gotten everything I want to get out of this game. I feel completely satisfied. I feel like all my money was spent well, and it felt like there was a sense of finality and closure. Now with Dragalia, one of my concerns with the storytelling is that they're biting off a little bit more than they can chew. It's a frequent refrain I've had, but new story chapters tend to introduce like a lot more plot holes or threads than they actually close up. like the androids thing, one of the reasons I wasn't a huge fan of Chapter 11 was I just feel like, what are they going to do? You know, are we actually going to be able to see all these storylines resolved in a satisfactory way in the lifetime of Dragalia? Because I really don't think Dragalia will necessarily be here in 5 years, or if it is here, I think it'll be here in some other form, not necessarily the title that we know and love right now. That's just a little bit of my perspective on things. I'm happy with whatever happens with Dragalia Lost. I'm sad that it's not as profitable, but at the same time, I feel like it's such a good game. Like, to me, that is the most important aspect. It's unfortunate that it's not able to be rewarded for that. It's sort of like how Super Mario Run, you could pay a fixed price and it's a pretty good game, but nobody wanted to buy it because they're used to other monetization models. So I will add one final quote from the article to kind of end things on. Most of the top-ranked mobile games adopt a freemium model wherein playing is free but gamers are pushed to spend on upgrades or mighty weapons to advance. That approach is coming under scrutiny with regulators clamping down on exploitative freemium mechanics that force players to pay to win. In Japan especially, gacha, a lottery system where players pay in hopes of scoring rare loot, invited controversy because of its addictive aspects. And I have to admit that that is a concern that I have. To me, the gacha is most fun when you have the availability or access to summon, but you're not necessarily guaranteed to get what you want. And whatever you get feels pretty good, it's interesting, you can use it. So I think of gacha as like a randomizer run, right? Like giving you some replayability because there's variety in it. That's when I like gacha the most. That's when I feel like it's most successful in its implementation. One of the things that turned me away from Fire Emblem Heroes, which I spent a lot of money on, played for a long time, and to be fair, still think is a great game. It offers a lot for free. But one of the things that kind of turned me away from it was having to summon so many extra copies of characters to plus 10 them. Not having to do that in Dragalia, just that alone is so generous. I mean, the layers of generosity to this game are absurd to the point that I don't know that we could really call it the same game or enjoy it in the way that we do if they weren't there. So as much as it saddens me to see people saying dead game, I also think that a lot of those people really don't play Dragalia Lost anymore anyway, or they've quit because it's too easy for them and maybe they had a toxic attitude toward players who are struggling. So I really don't care about all that. And I really am happy with however long the game lasts. I think it's part of the impermanence of life. I've harped on it a lot before. If it lasts a long time, sure. If it doesn't, that's totally okay. Let's see it to the end, and hopefully it's a good one. Anyway, y'all, that is going to do it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed my musings and ramblings on this topic while some Void battles played in the background. Let me know what you think about this topic in the comments below, since I know it comes up pretty often. Thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.